John, when did you sign on to this project? How long have you been working on it?
Oh, about 3 years ago.
3 years ago. Okay.
3 years ago. Justin had been on before me. They were developing the story with the studio. So they were working on a treatment. But the idea of doing this live action, Disney had some success with other live action adaptations. So they came to me. It was already a twinkle in their eye. And then the big thing that was interesting to me about it, because I enjoyed the 67 film,
right?
And I didn't understand what I would really do here. And then Alan Horn from Disney was talking about films like Life of Pi and Avatar, and that got me excited because we were not just going to create digital animals, but we're talking about creating a digital environment. Because if you have digital animals in a real environment, you end up having to replace a lot of it anyway. I had been through a lot of that with Iron Man. So the idea that we're just going to go for it, and I had been talking actually to Rob Legato about another project called Magic Kingdom, where I was trying to think of what's the smallest footprint you needed on a film to get it photoreal and convincing. And I had met him on the Hugo tour, and he was nice enough to invite me over, show me a lot of stuff he had worked on many films and other projects, and really gave me a good education. All the while in the back of my head, I'm praying, I hope I get to work with this guy. He knows everything about this stuff.
Nice.
And just to introduce the last piece of the puzzle,
Sure.
John Debney, I've worked with since Elf, and I had heard his story about having grown up on the Disney lot, meeting Walt. His dad had worked on Snow White, and he was a lot brat. And I was hearing stories about it as we've collaborated over the years. And I remember we worked with Richard Sherman on a theme in Iron Man 2 for the Stark Expo. And I thought that was wonderful. So John was always in the back of my head for this, knowing that he really lived and breathed the legacy of the Disney family. And I really wanted to go for something quite traditional that paid homage to my memories growing up of Disney, in addition to bringing something new to it.
Okay.
So that's kind of how it all came together.
So, Rob, were you in from the very start working on previs and stuff like that? Was everything recorded and kind of storyboarded out before you began working on live action, or were you...
No, this is interesting because a lot of this came from the storyboarding process. Sort of moved over to what Rob had worked on with Avatar. He showed me a whole new way of doing this. So, so he was on pretty early on.
Yeah, I think it was on from the very beginning, and first talk about it. I think we had the first meeting at Fairview about even the process of doing the film and what would we do and how would we do it. And I came from a firm belief that if you pre-visit in a naturalistic virtual cinematography way, you will get happy accidents, you will get cinematography interpretations, which are all story points. And like when you frame something, you frame it because what story you're trying to tell with each individual shot, and you do that manually. You look through it, you adjust, take a step back, take a step to the right, and all of a sudden it feels like a movie. It feels like you've told a story with the camera. So I'm a firm believer in that, and you need to really kind of get the elements in the scene up on its feet so you can start to make these adjustments, and then photograph it and then edit it in a normal editing fashion, so you can choose when you want to see the close-up, when you want to see the wide shot, when all those things. And in other computer-generated films, they tend to storyboard out and just produce that 3-second burst, that 5-second burst, and then you just sort of string it together, and that doesn't really have this analog cinematography background or artist background of that kind. Because everything's all related. It's all staging is art. It's a performance art, and then photographing in such a way to take advantage of that and capitalize on it, to me, was important, and it was important to John, and John was on board with that, or we were both on board at the same time, that if we make a photorealistic film, it has to feel like a movie. It can't feel like a hyper-real animated thing. It's got to feel like a real thing, and we went to great pains to make sure that we shot it like a movie is shot. Sometimes the light does not match. Sometimes the camera angles jiggle a little bit or do something, and you just take advantage of the accident or the rhythm or the energy you get from these things. And the best way of doing it is to kind of do it live. You really need to, and it also involves a director. It's like, I like that shot, I don't like that shot. I think if I want to tell a story, I need to be wider. I think we need to maybe do a camera move here. And all of a sudden you start engaging an actor-director into a normal realm of filmmaking, as opposed to you're into this kind of computer world and it's too technical and all that stuff.
Right. So how did you, you have a child who is the only live-action element. How did you get his performance to match in with the environments that
Well, that's the real high wire act here because we really made the movie 3 times.
There you go. That's what I was getting.
That's it. So the first thing was we said, okay, let's treat it like an animated movie. And this is, as I'm working with Justin, and now I bring on a whole story department as you would in an animated film. And animated films have much better batting average than live action. One of the reasons is they really stress test the story. And if you just watch any of the additional materials on a Pixar DVD, they put so much work into designing the color space and the palette, the character designs, the environments. And then they work through the story like sometimes 8 times in show reels before they ever commit to making the film or ever turn a computer on for rendering. And so I had a head of story, a story department, and we kept, as we were doing drafts and we were giving notes, we would actually have animators do rough sketches of the whole thing so we could watch the whole movie. And then once we signed off on that, you would normally on an animated film go into layout, which means on a computer you would stage the characters, you would begin to do simple animation, start to set lights and camera angles. But in this, that's when we did what Rob was talking about, and that's really when Rob rolled up his sleeves. Because we went to a volume, we had people in motion capture suits, we designed the environments like you would almost a video game, and we would scout on a computer using an Xbox controller or a VR headset, and we would look in the volume and start to pick it out as though we were filming in a real location with an AD and with a cinematographer, Bill Pope, and with Rob. We had the whole crew there. And we had the kid, Neil Setti, in the motion capture suit, and if it was a bear, we would have 2 actors in motion capture suits, like an old vaudeville horse walking with the kid, and when you looked on the screen, you would see the entire environment and a bear walking around. And we did that at DD in a volume. Once we finished doing the motion capture version of the film, we would give all the dailies of all the shots that Bill or Rob would do to my editor, Mark Lavosi, and they would cut it together as if it were dailies. And then once we locked in a cut there, in the meantime, we're also recording the voices and bringing the kid with Bill Murray, having Bill Murray and Christopher Walken together, everybody together that we could, to get those great audio tracks that we would also cut in the editing room, like a radio play, and also pull reference of the facial expressions and eye contact patterns with 3 cameras, sometimes motion capture, usually just witness cams, give those to the animators so that as we cut it together, we're also cutting together the actual actors so that down the line we could animate it. Then after we're finished with the whole, where like in Avatar, they would begin rendering at that point, we then began principal photography. So we would take every shot of the kid and figure out how far he moved, where the camera is, where the lights were, and that part looked more like Gravity. Small set. If he walked 20 feet, we would build 20 feet a set. We would light it, have blue screen, and as we would shoot each shot, we would go behind the curtain and cut it into the movie, pull the kid in, show it to him, and then by the end of photography, every kid shot had the kid in it. And then we would go into post-production and animation as you would on a standard film.
So would he
It's
have
that easy.
Yeah, right.
Anybody can do it.
Right.
Anybody could do it.
So when he pulls up, when he has certain things in his hands, were those handmade props?
Yeah, anything he touched or
Snakeskin
anything that cast a shadow on him, those are the key things. But anything except like, and this is really where Rob and his crew earn their keep here, is we did things that they didn't do in other films, and we welcomed opportunities to have interactivity. So if the kid is saying goodbye to the wolf and saying running his fingers through her fur, we put that right in front of the camera. Normally you'd sort of say, could we do it this way? Put it behind the wolf? No, through the fur. And not only that, but it wasn't a showy effect shot. It was an emotional shot with great music, the rain falling, good performance from the kid, Lupita Nyong'o selling it with her voice and her performance and having them touch heads. And those are the moments that I think make this thing that I'm most proud of. That the visual effect shots that you don't think of as a visual effect shot, they just disappear.
So, John, you had the kind of, this was part of the plan, I think, to incorporate some of the Sherman Brothers songs in there, and
Yes.
yet it had to feel kind of intrinsic to what was going on. It wasn't a full
Yes.
musical. So what were the choices on a writing level and also in the composing level of saying, okay, we're going to use a little bit of this here, and then you also took pieces of it in your score so that people who are familiar with it will get it, and yet at the same time, it had to work for people who didn't know the film. So can you talk about that kind of?
Well, I'd be curious to know if the songs were in the script. I read an early version, and I think they were.
Yeah, Bare Necessities.
Bare Necessities was on.
That was a real inspiration point, I think, for the relationship between Mowgli and Baloo, because it was this idea of, it was a song that friends would sing with each other, just like two kids pushing their bikes and they have a song that they sing on the way to the baseball game or something like that. And so that was their mantra. That's how they lived. And thematically, then it could build into that. And I think what you guys did with I Want to Be Like You, that was one that was really I think another experiment and really interesting.
It was Wannabe was a tougher one. Bare Necessities, I think it sounds like, Justin, you guys had it in script form, and it was always probably in the script. Wanna Be Like You was something John wanted to add, but he was very concerned, and very rightly so. He wanted it to feel organic to the film. He didn't want Wanna Be Like You to just come out of the ether and then, oh, we're in a song and dance number now. And so we worked, that was one of the hardest pieces in the whole score to do, and we kept tweaking it. We kept adding more of the song in before Chris Walken starts singing. So it was a process, trial and error, and I think where we ended up is pretty cool. It's organic to what's happening in the scene and in the story overall, but hopefully it doesn't come out from complete left field. And those of you that know the song, I think people that know the song and love it are very overjoyed to hear it. And others that aren't as familiar, I think the first reaction might be, wow, what's the song? Oh, okay, this is... So every step of the way, John was very careful and very concerned about music and these songs that are so iconic. He wanted them to be absolutely integrated organically.
So Justin, did you originally, I think it was John who wanted to change Ka to a female voice. Yeah. So did you have to change any of the script at all when that occurred?
I think that was at the very beginning of Ka's character. Was John's idea that this should be a female, and then that created in her character this motherly, seductive energy that suddenly fit very well. It was always in our minds that Ka should be the vehicle of exposition to sort of talk a little bit about where Mowgli had come from, because he wanted to start the movie right away and did not want to get into that at the beginning, which I think was a great choice. And to have this, Scarlett Johansson, this very seductive voice, just kind of luring him in and luring us in as an audience and kind of circling us, it was great. It was something that I don't think would have felt the same if the gender had been switched.
Well, I wish we could talk longer, but congratulations, and
Thank you.
Hope to see you back here soon. Thank you all.